to look at a part of the planet we have never seen before. Scientists found was both stunning and surprising, proving that life exists under astonishing conditions.
Nearly 26,000 feet beneath the Atlantic, deep in the Puerto Rico Trench, scientists stumbled on something that simply shouldn't be there. This find flips everything we thought we knew about Earth's darkest depths.
Why do we need to go to the depths of the ocean in this way?
Well, the oceans constitute 70% of our planet, and of those oceans, 80% are still unexplored.
Unusual seismic rumbles, alien-like sea creatures. Each clue adds to a mystery that's rewriting the rules. Experts are racing to make sense of it, but one thing's clear. Whatever's lurking down there could change science forever.
There's all these concerns about climate change and how does the world work. We still don't understand many of the mechanisms of our world, and that can only be ascertained by doing more marine research.
And once you hear what they found, you just might start to question reality itself. Traces of mega earthquakes and tsunamis. The waves crashing onto Puerto Rico's shores today seem peaceful, but just beneath them lies a forgotten story few have ever imagined. In 2023, a team from the USGS Pacific Coastal and Marine Science Center teamed up with experts at the University of Puerto Rico. Their mission? To search the coastline for signs of tsunamis that may have slammed the island centuries ago. They scoured dozens of locations, hunting for spots where nature might have secretly preserved the scars of an ancient disaster. Eventually, they landed in East Bajura near Isabela, a quiet stretch on Puerto Rico's northwest coast. There, hidden behind old dunes, was a mangrove pond, calm, untouched, and perfectly shielded from ocean chaos for generations. In other words, the perfect place to dig for answers. And when they drilled into the pond's sediment, they hit something strange. About 1.5 feet down, they found a thin, even layer of sand. It wasn't just any sand, it showed signs of being deposited by something massive. The bottom was eroded. The particles shifted from coarse to fine. This had tsunami written all over it. Dating revealed that this sand was likely dropped between 1470 and 1530, possibly by a colossal megathrust earthquake from the Puerto Rico Trench, one of the Atlantic's deadliest fault zones. But here's the wild part. This isn't the first time signs like this have shown up. Similar tsunami deposits have been discovered on islands like Anegada, Anguilla, and St. Thomas, traced back 1,200 to 1,500 years and tied to a massive quake, possibly between magnitude 8.0 and 9.0. That fault rupture may have stretched over 186 miles underwater. If the Puerto Rico deposit came from the same event, the quake might have been even more violent than anyone thought, possibly tearing across nearly 248 miles. That would make it one of the region's biggest earthquakes in recorded history. Some models estimated it at a magnitude 8.7, but this new evidence? It could mean the real number was even higher. Clues suggest the tsunami hit both the Atlantic and Caribbean coasts of Puerto Rico, leaving destruction in its wake. Time has buried the chaos, but those quiet layers of sand still whisper what history forgot. And that matters, because Caribbean records only go back 500 years. Quakes above magnitude 8.0 near the Puerto Rico Trench are rare in the books, but filling in these blanks helps scientists understand the very real dangers the island still faces today. Holorans, sea cucumbers. The dark depths of the Puerto Rico Trench are home to creatures almost no one has seen and a few we've completely misunderstood. Back in 1965, a bold French research crew aboard the bathyscaphe Archimede took a daring plunge into this shadowy abyss. They reached nearly 24,000 feet down, a place so extreme, sunlight gives up and metal gets flattened like a soda can. Down there, they spotted something bizarre. Over 200 ghostly fish gliding silently across the seafloor. They called them snailfish and chalked them up to the Leporidae family. But there was a catch. They didn't bring back any samples. So for decades, that ID stuck, even if it wasn't quite right. Then came 2019. Science had leveled up. Armed with the DSV limiting factor, a submersible built like a titanium tank, researchers dove back into the same trench. But the snailfish, gone. Now it was all about sea cucumbers, lots of them, specifically a weirdly elegant type called peniagone. At a glance, these cucumbers were doppelgangers for snailfish. Same soft bodies, similar colors, spooky vibe. But with clearer tech and sharper eyes, scientists realized the truth. Those fish from 1965 weren't fish at all, just some very convincing cucumbers. They may only be 4 to 8 inches long, squishy and slow-moving, but don't be fooled. These creatures are hardcore survivors, inching across the trench floor on tiny tube feet, thriving where almost nothing else can. But how do they eat in this watery desert? Turns out, the ocean floor is dotted with mysterious mounds, some as wide as 16 inches and tall as 8. These are buffet zones. The sea cucumbers wave their tentacles like lazy arms, sweeping up a feast of drifting plankton crumbs, fish flakes, and ocean dust from above. And they're not alone. Sharing this alien world are shrimp-like critters, small but mighty, perfectly designed for the freezing, crushing dark. Quiet, stubborn survivors, proving one thing loud and clear. Even in the harshest corners of Earth, life refuses to quit. Lysianacid amphipods. For years, scientists were certain of one thing. Lysianacid amphipods, those tiny shrimp-like critters, were strictly Pacific dwellers. You'd find them skittering around the deepest parts of trenches like Tonga and Kermadec, but not anywhere else. Well, that belief got flipped on its head in 2015. That year, researchers sent remotely operated vehicles diving into the pitch-black void of the Puerto Rico Trench. 23,000 feet down, they found something totally unexpected. Those same amphipods, alive and well, crawling along the trench floor like it was just another Tuesday. It was the first time these creatures had ever been spotted in the Atlantic. And though they're barely the size of a fingernail, about 0.7 to 1 inch long, they made a big impression. Because down there, every scrap of life is a miracle. See, the trench isn't exactly paradise. No sunlight, no plants, barely any movement, just a whole lot of nothing. But these little guys are scavenger extraordinaires. They wait patiently for the ocean's version of fast food to arrive. Dead squid, fish, anything that happens to sink from the world above. And when it does, they dive in, recycling the remains like nature's cleanup crew. Despite their delicate look, amphipods are anything but fragile. Their bodies aren't armored like the bugs in your backyard. They're soft, squishy, and built for pressure. That flexibility helps them survive in an environment where most creatures would pop like a balloon. Interestingly, the younger amphipods stay closer to the surface, playing it safe. But the grown-ups? They head straight for the danger zone, down near the trench floor, where conditions are brutal and unforgiving, and they thrive there. Which leaves us with a pretty wild thought. If these tiny survivors can turn up in a place no one expected, how many other mysterious creatures are hiding in the deep, just waiting for us to notice?
With some of the creatures that we captured during our recent trip to the Sargassum Rock.
Isopods feeding on Sargassum. During a recent expedition, scientists made an interesting discovery far beneath the surface. They found isopods feeding on Sargassum. Sargassum is a floating seaweed which is known for forming golden brown patches on the surface of the Atlantic, most especially in the Sargasso Sea. It is lightweight, full of air-filled bladders, and drifts across the ocean surface. But how exactly does it end up nearly 26,000 feet below the seafloor? As Sargassum ages or gets overloaded with debris, it can sink, drifting slowly down to the trench floor. And the isopods found in this dark abyss are ready to consume it and feed on the organic matter and microbes that grow on it. These armored bug-like scavengers are usually 0.07 to 4 inches long. The Bathyopsurus nibelini, which is a type of deep-sea isopod, was recently discovered swimming at a depth of 3.7 miles. This discovery, which was led by Johanna Weston, was made in a 2022 expedition in the submersible Alvin. The 4K imaging system of the submersible captured the isopod swimming upside down, slowly dragging pieces of sargassum away from the seafloor. Using its tiny serrated mouthpiece, this little scavenger chewed through the plant tissue with surprising efficiency. But how was it able to digest something so foreign and hard to digest? To find out, researchers took DNA samples from the isopod's gut. What they discovered was remarkable. The isopod carried specialized gut microbes that could break down tough plant fibers and even fix nitrogen, turning the seaweed into usable food. Alongside this expedition, Alvin filmed 32 individual isopods from about 16,000 to 20,000, 400 feet depths, and collected 2 samples for study at the surface. The footage collected by Alvin was a first in marine biology. It showed a clear view of deep-sea crustaceans feeding on sargassum. But the isopods aren't the only thing the scientists have found lurking in the dark abyss. Mud volcano. What started as a strange reading from the ocean floor became one of the most fascinating finds in the Puerto Rico Trench. In 2003, a group of scientists boarded a NOAA research vessel to investigate. But no one expected what they were about to discover. At a depth of about 26,000 feet, they found something surprising. It was a mud volcano. But this volcano was not like the fiery ones seen on land. Instead of hot lava, it released cold, thick mud mixed with seawater and gas. This strange process is caused by the enormous pressure beneath the ocean floor, not by heat alone. The tectonic plates that meet along the Puerto Rico Trench play a huge role in this. As the heavier plate slides beneath the lighter one, it drags layers of dirt and debris deep underground. Over time, this trapped material heats up, mixes with fluids, and the pressure builds until it erupts. But instead of fire, cold gray mud is forced out. These mud volcanoes can release mud that travels up to 6 miles across the ocean floor. In some areas, they form massive mounds, stretching feet high and looking like underwater hills. But that was not all the scientists found. They also spotted signs of active fluid seepage, where methane gas escapes from beneath the surface. Along with this came unusual mineral deposits, including hydrated clays and hard carbonate crusts. All of it paints a clear picture of just how active and unpredictable the trench really is. Microbial ecosystem. It is hard to imagine life existing nearly 26,000 feet beneath the surface of the ocean, but that is exactly where scientists have made one of their most unexpected discoveries. Inside the cold, crushing depths of the Puerto Rico Trench, hidden far below the Atlantic, some organisms have found a way to survive against the odds. These life forms are incredibly small. You cannot see them with your eyes alone. But with advanced equipment, researchers managed to collect and study them. Among the tiny single-celled microbes were groups like Thaumarchiota, the SAR11 clade, and piezophilic bacteria. What makes these organisms special is how they adapt to the high-pressure world they live in. Down there, temperatures are freezing. The pressure is more than 1,000 times greater than what humans experience at sea level. But these microbes continue to thrive. To figure out how they do it, scientists compared their genes to those of microbes that live in shallow waters. The results were fascinating. It was discovered that the deep-sea microbes adjust how their cells function when the pressure increases. They change their transcriptome and proteome, which affects how their bodies work. They also produce different types of membrane fatty acids that keeps their cells flexible under pressure. Their respiratory systems adapt too. They create more protective molecules called osmolytes, helping them stay alive. One of the most interesting discoveries was how these microbes use a process called aerobic oxidation of carbon monoxide for energy. By studying their genetic material, scientists found they carry special COX genes that help with this process. It is a unique survival method in a place where food and energy sources are hard to come by. In recent years, research has gone even further. Scientists now use a method called single-cell genomics to look at the DNA of just one microbe at a time. With this, they studied 4 different microbes from the trench. They belong to groups such as gamma proteobacteria, alpha proteobacteria, Bacteroidetes, and Planctomycetes. The results confirmed earlier studies. These microbes carry systems that help them deal with toxic metals, transport nutrients into their cells, and break down complex sugars. It is a survival toolkit that helps them cope with the harsh conditions deep beneath the sea. These discoveries are helping scientists understand not only how life can survive in extreme environments, but also how much of the deep ocean remains unexplored. Negative gravity anomaly. The ocean holds many strange forces, but few are as puzzling as what scientists have found beneath the waters of the Puerto Rico Trench. This area has been linked to the strongest negative gravity anomaly anywhere on Earth. To explain it simply, gravity is slightly weaker over this part of the ocean. Objects drop just a bit slower, and even the surface of the water dips down, creating what experts call a gravity low. It is not something visible to the eye, but the effect is strong enough to confuse navigation tools. Sailors passing through the area have reported strange readings from their equipment without understanding why. The deepest section of the Puerto Rico Trench reaches about 2,705 feet. But interestingly, the most negative gravity reading does not happen there. It occurs around 31 miles south, near a spot where the forearc, which is the area in front of the subducting tectonic plate, is unusually deep. Back in 1970, geophysicist Peter Molnar decided to investigate what was causing this strange force. Using gravity data and estimates of the Earth's crust thickness, his research pointed to something unexpected beneath the surface. He believed the anomaly was the result of a large, hanging piece of the Atlantic lithosphere buried beneath the trench. The findings suggested this slab was shaped like a giant cylinder, stretching about 62 miles wide and equally deep. What made it more interesting was its density. It turned out to be 5 to 10% heavier than the rock around it. That extra weight presses down with enough force to pull the trench even lower, creating the unusual gravity reading. Scientists believe this explains why the gravity anomaly exists, but the trench continues to raise questions about what else lies hidden far below. Discovery of Duabrachium sparksei. Hidden far beneath the waves, in a deep canyon northwest of Puerto Rico, scientists made an unusual discovery that left them both curious and amazed. It happened during an expedition back in April of 2015, led by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Using a robotic vehicle called Deep Discoverer, they sent cameras almost 13,000 feet down into the dark, freezing waters. What they found floating gently in that pitch-black environment was something no one had seen before. It was a small, transparent creature with a soft, jelly-like body. The creature was later named Duabrachium sparksei, a newly identified species of comb jelly. What made this discovery stand out is that no one physically touched or collected the animal. Instead, everything scientists learned came from the sharp, high-definition images captured by the underwater robot. Comb jellies like this one might look delicate, but they are carnivores. They feed on tiny arthropods, which they catch using rows of hair-like structures on their surface. These hairs beat rapidly and helps them drift through the water with surprising control. Though similar in appearance to jellyfish, they are not closely related. During the dive, researchers spotted 3 individuals of this new species. Each of them had two thin, long tentacles beneath their soft bodies. The tentacles seemed to anchor them to the seabed, keeping them steady as they floated. It almost looked like they were hovering, much like a hot air balloon would move in the air. The discovery of Duabrachium sparksei is only the beginning. Scientists believe more research is needed to understand how this unusual comb jelly fits into the deep-sea ecosystem. But for now, one thing is certain. The oceans of the Puerto Rico Trench are still hiding life we are only beginning to discover. Bottom water properties. Physical oceanographic measurements in and around Puerto Rico have a long history, in part because of its U.S. Commonwealth status, and in part due to the previous Navy presence. As with most of the world's oceans, the deep abyssal and hadal waters have seen the least sampling. In fact, current and water property measurements spanning the water column over the world's deep oceanic trenches are exceedingly rare. However, when scientists took a closer look at the extremely deep waters of the Puerto Rico Trench, they discovered something surprising in the hadal zone. Even at depths reaching as far as 26,000 feet, the water showed chemical and physical features shaped by the trench's extreme isolation from the surface world. In 2022, researchers from the University of Puerto Rico sent down special vehicles equipped with advanced instruments called CTD profilers. These tools can measure things like temperature, salinity, and pressure, even at incredible depths of 29,500 feet. What they found on the trench floor was fascinating. The water temperature remained almost steady at about 2.7 degrees Celsius. This might sound cold, but it's actually warmer compared to the near-freezing waters found at the bottoms of Pacific Ocean trenches. This warmth comes from the type of deep water found in the North Atlantic, called North Atlantic deep water. Over time, as this deep water slowly travels and mixes through the ocean, it retains some of its heat by the time it reaches the trench. Also, they measured the salinity of the water and found it was about 4.6 practical salinity units, which matches the usual salinity levels found in this part of the Atlantic Ocean. But perhaps the most amazing discovery was how little oxygen was dissolved in these deep waters. Tests showed oxygen levels as low as 4 micromoles. This makes it one of the lowest oxygen readings ever recorded in ocean waters. This low oxygen level is more than just a number. It plays a huge role in shaping life down there. Because oxygen is so scarce, tiny microbes that live in the trench sediments can't rely on oxygen to survive. As a result of this, aerobic respiration is mostly limited to just the upper layers of the sea floor. Sediments geochemistry. The deeper researchers explore the Puerto Rico Trench, the more they realize it is not just the life forms that hold clues about Earth's past. Even the mud beneath their feet tells a story of its own. Just like valleys on the Earth's surface can get filled up with soil and rocks over time, the trench under the Puerto Rico Ocean also collects sediments over time. And what makes this trench different is the way the sediments are shaped and arranged. At the bottom of the trench, sediments are not just dumped randomly. They form layers, with the oldest ones buried deep below and the newest ones on top. These layers come from different time periods, including the Holocene, Pleistocene, Tertiary, and even the much older Upper Cretaceous. Due to the trench's steep walls, sediments slide down and settle in a way that follows the slope. In the uppermost layer, the Holocene sediments are where the crushed shells of tiny sea creatures like pteropods and foraminifera are located. In deeper, hillier areas of the trench and on the outer ridge, brown sea clay can be found. At the steep southern wall, older greenish-gray clay from the Miocene era. The sediments are formed from broken rock slopes made of serpentine and limestone. On the north wall, just below the muds, are volcanic rocks, cherts made from radiolarians, and chalky marls full of foraminifera, which are from the Upper Cretaceous period. These layers sit above fault lines, where Earth's plates have shifted and cracked the seafloor. To better understand how all these sediments are spread out, scientists collected core samples about 10 to 33 feet long from different parts of the trench floor. By studying the color, texture, and material of these samples, they were able to match similar layers of sediments across distances of over 124 miles. One thing they noticed: the farther down into the deep abyssal plains you go, the finer the grains become. So how did these sediments get there? Variation in bottom topography and sediment properties shows that the layers were deposited by turbidity currents. These powerful currents rushed through sea canyons, traveled across the ocean floor, and finally poured into the trench, spreading the sediment sideways as they slowed down. In at least 2 known cases, these underwater mud avalanches were so strong they carried fine sand over 62 miles across the ocean floor and even managed to deposit it 33 feet above the point where they first entered the trench floor. The Puerto Rico Trench is one of Earth's deepest and least understood places. Even though it lies right here on our own planet, it is still full of mysteries. Despite the strange sea creatures and various anomalies that have been discovered, there is still so much that is not known. It's amazing to think that more humans have been sent to the moon to explore Mars than underwater divers to explore the deep ocean. In fact, scientists believe that we know more about outer space than what we know about the deep sea. Looking ahead, researchers will continue using high-tech tools like deep-diving submersibles, underwater vehicles, and advanced sensors to explore deeper and for longer periods. With better technology, scientists hope to map the trench floor more clearly, discover new species, study deep-sea microbes, and better understand how the trench shapes ocean currents, earthquakes, and life itself. Despite this, there are many questions that are still left unanswered. What other strange life forms might be hiding in the depths of the trench? What role does the trench play in the bigger picture of Earth's oceans and geology? Though we have some answers, the Puerto Rico Trench will forever remain a mystery. If this journey fascinates you, share your thoughts below and subscribe to join us as we explore more secrets about Mother Earth. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.